What's up, you guys? It's 2Bricks, and this is the kind of announcement video, I guess, for the complete instructions for my ultimate system scale Millennium Falcon. I'm actually referring to it as the ultimate playset scale one now, because a lot of people aren't familiar with the term system scale. And just for those who don't know, it just refers to Lego's kind of standard boxed sets, you know, regular ones that come with minifigures that are by no means minifigure scale, but just are compatible. So anyway, today I just wanted to show you guys some of the changes that I made. Most of them are pretty small and for either structural reasons or for keeping the price to a reasonable, keeping the price down as much as reasonably possible. So yeah, I just want to show you guys that, and then also the additions that I've made where obviously you can see the Falcon is propped up right now. That is actually sitting on a stand, the instructions for which will be included. And the minifigures in front here are part of that display base. And I'm going to show you guys how all of that works. So yeah, without further preamble, let's just jump in and take a look at some of the additions / changes. Okay, so as I mentioned, probably the biggest addition here is the stand, which comes with this removable minifigure kind of plaque at the front, which I made to be compatible with regular size minifigures, and can hold 11. Wait, am I right about that? 3, 6, yeah, 11. And I chose to just depict the 3 main era crews of the Millennium Falcon. So you have, the solo movie era, the classic trilogy guys here, and then the Force Awakens forward. So yeah, that's what that is. And then it just plugs in with a couple of Technic pins into the front of the stand. This part here is actually part of the, sorry, I removed that. That's just a little connector kind of bridge piece. But when you remove it, you just have a black front of the stand right here. And I think, that looks pretty good as is. And so if you're just looking to display the ship only, you can do that. And then back here, if we take a look at it, I think I'd seen a lot of people displaying their UCS Falcons on custom-made bases like this, so I thought this would be a really cool addition. You really want to see the Falcon at an angle like this. It's kind of how we remember the ship, as as if it's banking. I think that's just a really cool dynamic pose for it. I have it where when it's on the stand, you can have the legs deployed or not, so either way. That makes it easier for if you're just picking it up off a table, you don't have to collapse all the landing gear before you put it on the stand. You can just put it right on there and then collapse them afterwards. So I think that's handy. And I always like to give people options, so yeah, I decided to do it that way. The stand itself is pretty sturdy. Of course, you don't want your model going anywhere when it's on the stand. There's a little section down here that plugs into one of the kind of maintenance bay holes in the bottom of the ship, and so that just keys in right there, and then all of these other parts are keyed into plates underneath the bottom of the structure, but they're not actually held in with studs. So this is, essentially just sitting on here, but it's very secure once it's on here. It's definitely not going to just fall off or anything like that. And then you may have noticed down here, there's this weird structure, and you're like thinking, what is that? It's actually a little spot where I wanted to be able to include the rectangular dish. If you guys wanted to customize the ship to be the Force Awakens version, you can just pop off. It's called a rectenna. I don't know. This is more like a rectenna because it's rectangular, but you just replace the dish, super easy, and then you can just stow the old one underneath away, so it's kind of hidden but close by. So it's just that easy to customize the ship to the Force Awakens era. So yeah, the addition of the dish and the stand are probably the 2 biggest things that I've added. And then on the inside, I've made a couple of changes for ease of play and also for ease of storing minifigure weapons and things like that. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so a couple of aesthetic tweaks that I've made on the interior here are the seat backs. I've actually changed the color of the seat back to be all light gray because I think it just blends a little bit better. I cleaned up some of the color scheme, like in here there was a lot of different color plates, and I just cleaned that up to just be black with like a black stripe, and then gray, and then the kind of dark tan interior details, just stuff like that. There's a lot of changes to the actual base structure itself to make it more sturdy. Things where I saw an opportunity to add longer parts that would run through, like for example, instead of 2 2x6 plates, I used a single 2x12 plate that would just strengthen up various areas of the ship. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff under the hood, so to speak. And then a couple of things that I added for functionality were some additional clips. Like I wanted to put this here so that you'd have a spot to put like Rey's staff, for example, or a longer weapon when you're playing with characters in the ship and you want a place to just keep their weapons so you don't lose them. And then around the other side of this corridor here, I actually created a gun rack where down here there's 4 clips that are available for you to just store all of your minifigure guns. You know, I felt like that was something that this space was kind of empty before, and I thought it was a usable space, so I wanted to include something in there. And then the other kind of bigger changes, I added this panel wall detail in here that is kind of my take on a simplified version of the what's called the Makeout Room in the Falcon. It's basically the little kind of engine room maintenance area where Han and Leia have their first little kind of romantic moment. And so, you know, if you want to recreate something to that effect, in that area, have Han and Leia sneak off. That's a little place to do that. So that's just something. I ended up making the control sticks and little kind of controller arms here for the sled section for the gunners all black because it's a lot closer to how it appears in the movie. And yeah, as far as aesthetic changes go, oh, and another thing, I just switched out the tools in this toolbox. Previously I used screwdriver pieces, which, as it turns out, when you try to get those on Bricklink, are insanely expensive. So I just wanted to make a kind of indication of something that could look like tools in this little toolbox here, but that don't cost an arm and a leg. So that's something that I thought was worthwhile doing. And then finally, just down here, I actually rebuilt this side little section. I wasn't happy with the tolerance, was a little too tight, and I felt like it might actually border on illegal as far as LEGO standards. I don't want anybody having their parts get stressed. So I just redesigned this part to slip nicely into this little gap without having anything that's too stressful, basically. Oh, and of course, this little added detail in here, I have a small little crate, and inside of there, you can find Han's golden dice. And then lastly, I want to show you guys on the exterior, there's a couple of little substitutions and color swaps that I made just to make things a little bit easier as far as price goes. So one example would be this little tile right here. I previously used this decorated tile, which came with the very first Millennium Falcon and actually was used to represent these maintenance ports in the front. I thought that was a nice bit of just visual external detail, but to get a hold of these is going to set you back an arm and a leg. So I just decided that for everyone, for the ease of usage, it would be easier to just go with a standard black part for that. And then if you happen to have one of those pieces or you want to go out of your way to get one, you can just make that swap. It's really easy. Another one is I included this reddish brown archway piece right here on the gunner section. Let me just pop that off and show you guys. So that just kind of continued down the reddish color scheme a little bit further, which is more accurate to the movie. But again, one of these is going to cost you something like $11. So I decided to make the switch. I'm using an old gray one here because I have that available, but in the instructions there are no old gray pieces. It's all light gray because, again, old gray, they don't make it anymore, and so it's by nature extremely expensive. And in addition to that, a lot of times when you're trying to purchase old gray parts, they will be listed as that in the actual seller's description, but when you receive them, they'll actually be new gray, and you have to then go back and say, this isn't right, and then you have a whole back and forth with the seller. So I figured to just make everybody's life a little bit easier, just removing any old gray parts from the inventory is the smart thing to do. Because, you know, for my eye, I actually enjoy the mixture of faded parts and older pieces that just give it a little bit of extra visual texture. But, you know, a lot of people don't actually like that, first of all. And second of all, like I said, the headache of actually getting a hold of those pieces, to me, isn't really worth it. So just simplifying, streamlining a little bit, and there you go. So that's pretty much the extent of the changes. Oh, I switched out this one part right here so that the hose pipe would come closer to the edge of this ring. You know, little tiny little details like that I've switched out. But for the most part, everything that you saw in the initial unveiling is pretty much exactly the way that it was then. So another small, but I think really impactful change that I made was that I managed to eliminate this little gap that was occurring in here, where the whole top section of the lid was kind of sitting a little bit raised. And that's just due to the fact that this whole top section is made of plates stacked on top of each other. And Lego plates have a natural tendency to want to flex themselves kind of in an upward direction towards the studs. And so what I've done is I just kind of introduced a couple of, one additional stud on either side with the use of this 2x2 jumper piece, which doesn't get pulled up when you pull the lid off, but is able to then hold in the entire top section really securely, actually. And so that's something I was really happy with. It just pops right in there and just holds it perfectly nicely. So this whole section just looks a lot nicer. A couple of final little things of note. The cockpit pieces here with this printed decoration pattern on them, that's this one and this one here, are actually not available in Studio or Stud.io, which is the program that I used to make the instructions. So I included a note and I included a photograph in the instructions to show you that these pieces appear to just be transparent, and I've showed you that these are the ones that you want to swap out. And so in the parts list, I'm also going to switch those out to make sure that you guys are ordering the correct ones when you place your order as well. And then one final thing is another little detail that in the instructions, these parts don't have the ability to be sculpted into this shape to be able to plug in where I need them to be. So I just substituted the instruction page for a photograph showing you how these go instead of just being kind of straight. They kind of just collide into the geometry and just plug them in like right here, and they're just straight. So that might have been super confusing and weird for you guys to try to figure that out, so I just figured a photograph is the best way to do that. So I made that substitution as well. But yeah, that actually does include all of the changes now that I've made. All right guys, so there it is, the ultimate playset scale Millennium Falcon. I think you guys are going to agree that this is something that's going to look really cool on a shelf, and I seriously hope that you guys enjoy building this, because designing it and translating the instructions was really fun, and I really tried to make sure that everyone who purchases it gets a really cool building experience that feels like a legitimate Lego set. Hopefully, just saving you a little bit of money versus purchasing the Ultimate Collector Series ones that Lego has put out. So yeah, I hope you guys are happy with that. If there's anything else that I didn't show that you guys are interested in seeing, just leave a comment down below and I'll answer your questions. And then there's going to be a couple of little notes and things along the way in the instructions for just in case there's tricky bits that, maybe, like I know that attaching this back section and this front section to the middle portion can be a little bit tricky. So I've tried to illustrate that as clearly as I possibly can of, how that goes. But yeah, like I said, if you guys ever have any questions about the design, leave them down below and I will get back to you. All right, so thank you guys so much. I'm gonna get on to the next video. I really appreciate the support. Of course, everything that, all the sales from the instructions goes towards helping the channel to grow and to continue to be viable. So that's super duper helpful. And I really appreciate the support. All right, you guys, so I'll see you on the next one. May the force be with you, and thanks for watching. Bye, guys.